Oh, don't tell me I have brought fucking Dean Henderson Fowler, not Howler. Oh no! I only just realised that. Hi guys, Real United Talk. My name is Daedric Riggs. I'm joined tonight with George. How are you there, buddy?
I think I saw that. Hi, I'm
Why didn't you tell me in the pre-show?
no, I didn't. I literally just saw it now. I was like, what are you on
Oh,
about? I saw it, but I'm good, Dedrick. How are you? All right.
yeah, I'm a lot better after that. Bit squeaky in those, well, bit squeaky in those last 10 minutes or so, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think unnecessarily so. Again, it's hard. Obviously, it's for the sixth time now, 6 away games in the Premier League, and 6 times now we've come from behind to win a game. So incredible resilience from the players and fortitude. But again, I think potentially though that this specific game was more of it's not something you necessarily plan for. I think a lot of the other games that we have gone in behind it, and there were more sort of like things that were just terrible organisation or something like that, along those lines. But I think this one is just it all comes down to one person just a terrible error. So it's hard to take, obviously. But again, United come back, but in reference obviously to this obviously the squeaky bum time, as I think Mark sort of referenced in the chat. Yeah, I think it was just unnecessary, and I think there were really two sort of reasons for it. I think United wanted to sort of play within themselves, just maybe conserve energy, because we know this is going to be a busy schedule that's coming up, and obviously they've played quite a few games now recently compared comparatively, obviously Sheffield, who are only sort of in one competition. We've had the Champions League and stuff like that as well. So I think United were could be accused of complacency, or at least trying to see out the game and thinking it was won before it was. Which it never is in the Premier League, even if you're against, we've just seen it, even if you're against, I think Sheffield United as well, I saw just on the commentary, I think they've had the worst start of any league team ever in English football, something like that. So even against them, obviously, as soon as they get a goal back, it's all hands to the pump and some rather desperate and unseemly defending at the very end. So yeah, but nevertheless, the win was the most important thing, wasn't it? So.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was one of the most frustrating things, I guess. I think the commenters alluded to it. They said pretty much Sheffield United struggled to score. I think they said, I think they referenced the fact that they've only scored more than once in a game, maybe twice or 3 times. And obviously down near that end of the table, if you can't win every game 1-0. And I think it just shows like not one of their goals was like a clean strike, good goal, or anything. They were just the more scrappiest goals you're probably ever likely to see. I mean, the first one, like we just alluded to it then, what the hell is going on with that there? It really does make you wonder what is actually being taught on the training ground. Because, I mean, there's obviously been since last season, since I think it was the FA Cup semi-final, wasn't it? We've been saying, right, that's it. Henderson needs to come in next season. He needs to challenge, if not take, De Gea's spot. And De Gea's not been bad lately. I'm not going to say he's been amazing, but he's been a lot better than what he has been last season. And now we've let Henderson in for this game as well. The club that he was on loan last season, and within 5 minutes, he drops a ball. And it's just, you literally just wonder what the hell is being taught to them. It looks like you alluded to in the pre-match before we went live. Then, it's pointless if we're just going to knock it round each other at the back, play out from the back, and then just hoof it straight up front. It's pointless. You might as well just hoof it straight from the back. I mean, I don't know whether they almost tried to make an excuse for him, didn't it? Ali McCoy said the ball got caught underneath his feet, and I don't know what fucking game he was watching, by the way. I mean, he didn't want to give Pogba the credit for the assist. I mean, you and I had a bit of a back and forth in the group chat today. I'm obviously not one of Pogba's biggest fans, but I can respect the fact that at least when he makes an assist, you call it an assist. You don't say, "Oh, that's lucky." I mean, how the fuck he's got that job anyway on Amazon is beyond me. But yeah, I just think that game should have been a lot more comfortable than what it was in those last 10 minutes. And I can almost understand why maybe we almost started shitting it when it got back to 3-2, because I think we almost was remembering what happened last season, because wasn't that the exact same case? We went 3-2 up last season, and then obviously that happened in the last minute. So I think maybe that might have had a bit of a mental effect in their heads there. But yeah, I'm ultimately just pleased to get the win. I mean, getting onto it, Pogba, obviously, you absolutely love him. This is the thing everybody seems to get me confused on. I don't say that the guy's a bad footballer. I believe that the generally world-class talent. It's his attitude. If you could somehow get both of those things intertwined, we would have an amazing player here. But it's too much baggage. But on the day, yes, I will agree with you. I think he played absolutely fantastic. And like you said as well, you said Matic had a really good game. I fully agree with you on that one. But I mean, if you had to pick a man of the match right now for that full 90 minutes, who would you be going for?
It is difficult actually because wasn't really anyone that was a massive standout. So there were lots of good performances. I think there wasn't really necessarily a stellar performance. Obviously, Rashford's got to take quite a lot of the plaudits for two excellent finishes. Ultimately, I mean, obviously the second one was slightly fortuitous, but it came at the end of what was a scintillating team move. An absolute fantastic passing, counter-attacking manoeuvre, which we know that this team is capable of. But again, it's good for us to be sort of reminded of it, in that sense. But I think we sort of the only sort of players that didn't necessarily cover themselves in glory was obviously Henderson because of that error at the start. But also I think Maguire and Lindelof still, Ollie persists in playing them, game in, game out. They're almost even more so maybe than Bruno because we have seen Bruno obviously dropped, or at least rested, I should say, this season. Those two seem the erstwhile players that just never get dropped. And obviously you could understand that if we weren't for the sixth time in 6 consecutive away matches, we weren't going a goal down and having to be bailed out. You can understand if they were being solid and we keep clean sheets, but we really haven't kept clean sheets. In reference, obviously, to Dean Henderson. I feel a bit sorry for him really because he was almost thrown in the deep end in a certain sense. The fact that he obviously hasn't had that much game time this season, so it can be quite difficult then to sort of come in cold almost and obviously into a Premier League game, and that's in that first part you're not used to maybe because he hasn't played with Maguire and Lindelof obviously in a match that often. So he hasn't got used to their sort of passing or their moves and things like that, and you could almost see that goal coming before it actually happened because again,
I was gonna allude to that. It was almost like they obviously knew from being on loan there last season his weaknesses, and the fact I think it was like a minute before that first goal, the fact that they literally just crowded around him so much for that first corner. It's like, hold on a minute, this is they obviously must know that he does not like this. I mean, not many keepers will say, "Oh, I love that," but I know what you're saying with that one. That you could tell. You could just feel it coming, and I think even in the second half, although I think we absolutely dominate, I think the 3-2 flatters them. I think he was never really settled. I don't think. I think he made some really good saves, but I think you could almost feel it. Literally, he literally could concede again today. It wasn't the same kind of thing with De Gea where sometimes you know that you've got a little bit of safety. I think maybe just the occasion might have just got to him a little bit.
I hope that he's going to get more chances. I think it'd be the worst thing ever to obviously drop him again for De Gea, and we don't want to have this sort of thing where one of them makes one mistake and then gets dropped, and then the other one comes in, makes another mistake, gets dropped, and so forth. Because that you have to have some level of consistency, and also you have to put some faith in the goalkeepers as well, because it will create a quite I think hostile environment, and also unwelcome one if you obviously know that one mistake and you're immediately dropped and stuff like that. So then obviously that plays on your mind and it brings
it's added pressure. Yeah, I mean it's not difficult enough already as it is, but then you've got to think to yourself, if I kick one ball out of place, if I can throw one ball, that's out straight back out to him, and I might not get in for another fucking 6 months.
Yeah, I think that Maguire and Lindelof, obviously on that first goal again, we often see that they're not necessarily adept at actually bringing the ball out. Although they're both style themselves as ball playing centre backs, when it comes down to it in those goal kick situations, and we get them so often during a match, obviously. So it's and obviously, like I said, they're never dropped. So. And then it doesn't really necessarily seem to be a routine that's like worked out as to how we're going to break the press or anything like that. It just seems like it's just pass it and hope, and then horse it eventually or hoof it away. And both of them, obviously, are both quite slow and cumbersome, especially Maguire as well. They just can't, break the press, which is why, again, sort of bringing it back to what we were speaking about in terms of who played well. And Nemanja Matic was vital again today, because often what you could see was that he was almost a calming influence, and the one that would step in and put himself in between the centre backs, or even behind them, to offer an out ball and obviously help us to get out up the pitch. And that happens so often, and it's so I have seen, to be fair, I have seen Fred do it as well this season, but nowhere near as well. I think Matic is just,
Hold on a minute. Do I need to just timestamp this? Are you actually praising Fred for a moment?
No, did you not hear what I said after? I said we have seen Fred do this, but not nearly as well, is what I said. So, as I said, it's with Matic. It's also because he's been doing it for so long as well. He's so experienced at the role, and CDM is almost his bread and butter. It's his position. Everything was just so smooth when he's there, because he just moves naturally into the right position to offer the out ball. He naturally brings the ball up and stuff like that. And we need, with those two centre backs, we need that. We have to have someone that comes in and knows and can drop and obviously help us get up the pitch. And Matic was really, really good again today. And obviously, Pogba was good as well. But I am pleased overall in terms of the personnel that were selected. Obviously, with the front six that we had last season, that got us obviously third in the end. It's the same front six again, which is something that Ollie really hasn't utilised that much, through injury and also bits and pieces. So obviously pleased with that. And on the flip side of that, if we just sort of go through the goals, I think the equalising goal that we scored, Lindelof, to be fair to him, that was an excellent through ball. Timed perfectly, and obviously it was exactly in the right channel. Perfect through ball. But then Rashford, sometimes we can be critical of his touch, sometimes his end product is lacking. It can be, but to be fair, that was world class play in terms of the way he trapped that ball perfectly. So it ran exactly into his path, and then just perfectly slotted it home. And we really needed that equaliser as well, because I was at that stage I was thinking that Sheffield United were sort of parking the bus, and I was thinking,
it's really going to be one of those days, And I think a couple of minutes before that, he just missed one on one already. I mean, it was like, is he offside? Is he not onside? But even still, you'd still like to see him put away, and then maybe challenge for the VAR, see whether he is onside. But no, I totally agree with you. Going back to the Matic thing, I always think, a sense of defensive midfield is done well when you don't hear about them a lot, if that makes any sense. Yeah. When you're not going, oh, the ball's a lot in their area, you're noticing them playing. I think when you're not noticing a CDM player, it means they're doing the job. It means they're not always getting involved, and they're just literally breaking play up. I mean, obviously, let's get on to the second goal as well. The brilliant pass from Pogba, and obviously Martial's goal. I think, like I said in the group chat that we've got, I think Martial needed that. I think he was desperate, and I think 9 times out of 10 that he doesn't somehow score that, and literally the keeper collects it, and that's just it. But I think sometimes as a striker, you need that look. You need one to go in off somebody's ass. You need it to just somehow go in and just get that confidence ticking again. Because I think even when he got that goal in the Champions League with the header, there's just something not been right about him since he's come back this season. Whether he's come back, a bit overweight or just not sharp enough, I don't know what it is. But he doesn't seem as hungry. But I'm hoping now this can almost kickstart him on, and obviously we can get the Martial of last season, because now that Cavani's in now, I mean, we need to touch on that later on as well. He's now going to have someone challenging him again, and if the past is anything to be learned of, it's Martial doesn't tend to like it when someone else comes in, does he? He didn't like it when Ibra came in. All of a sudden, he just went within himself. He got pushed out to the left. We didn't see the best of him. Then Lukaku came in. This happened, and then we have nobody, and he shines. So this really is they're going to be this testing season of him, whether he can whether he is comfortable being challenged, or whether he just constantly wants to be the main one with no pressure.
Yes, yeah. Obviously, an excellent through ball from Pogba. I know a lot of people thought that, or at least the commentators didn't necessarily think that he meant it, but he clearly did. But if you watch Pogba enough, you know that he does. Pogba can do things that hardly any other footballers can do. He's, in terms of talent and ability, he's right up there with the best.
I almost feel sorry for him sometimes with Pogba because, like I said, I don't hate the guy. I just think his agent's a dick. But I almost feel sorry for him because, like you said, he will do passes that you're not expecting. I'm not expecting. Chances are the forwards aren't expecting. So that's maybe why they don't get put away, because he does do some magnificent balls, and I think almost Bruno does as well. I mean, like that ball he played to Matic, not Matic, Mata. That was another fantastic one. But getting back to Pogba, I don't want to make it about Bruno.
No, I thought what I was going to say there was what I thought was quite funny was how the commentators sort of said, "Oh, that was definitely meant to Matt." Obviously it's the way that they sort of treat Bruno, let's say, compared to Pogba. It's the
Yeah,
way
one was a missed pass, one was absolutely immaculate. Yeah. You've got to be one or the other.
But it's quite noticeable that they are like that. They have their sort of players that they are always like, sort of praising, and other players that they don't. And it's quite noticeable when you look out for it. But yeah, I am pleased that Martial got his goal. I think in terms of obviously his anticipation, as you said, sometimes the players don't anticipate the balls that Pogba plays, and therefore they don't look as good. But obviously, he did anticipate that, and I think Martial and Pogba have quite a good relationship, obviously, and have quite good communication on and off the field. And again, Martial is quite a clever player, a bit like Pogba. I think he knows when to make those runs. And obviously, it was a good run, and it was great persistence and endeavour from Martial in many ways. And he reacted to the fact that the goalkeeper made that mistake and kept his cool and calm, and obviously slotted home, which was very important. Obviously, it was good to switch over quite quickly as well from obviously 1-0 down to 2-1 within about 7 or 8 minutes. So yeah, that was obviously very positive. To go in at 2-1 at half time.
No, completely agree. Now, obviously, moving on to the third goal, probably the best goal, but also the worst keeping on their end, particularly. Obviously, Pogba starts the move, brilliant turn, plays it into Greenwood. Greenwood gets taken down. Then somehow the ball breaks to Fernandes. Fernandes backheels it into Martial's path. Martial does a bad touch, and obviously Rashford puts it away. I mean, at the time, it did look absolutely fantastic. I'd take nothing away from it. I was just like, I even put in our group chat, didn't it? Wow. And then when you watch it back, it's like, yeah, that was a bit of a bad pass, but then he comes on to someone else's bad touch. But I mean, taking nothing away from Rashford, you get it on target. Sometimes it's going to go in, and sometimes sometimes you're going to get lucky. But same again. I was just literally glad to see it go in, and I've got to admit, I personally thought, right, that's it, game dead and buried, and from this point onwards, maybe try and just get some more goals. Goal difference never really hurts. But I don't think we've seen that. I think afterwards, I think once we went 3-1 up, I found that we almost went a little bit back in our shell. Fernandes, as much as I do love him, I don't think he had the best of games today. I think as much as I hate to admit this, Pogba was short head and shoulders above him. It didn't really look the same. But that's what you're going to get from Bruno, I guess. You're going to get hit and miss games.
I think he was trying too much sometimes. Sometimes he tries to force it too often. And I think his decision making, because obviously he does an amazing player, and ultimately the reason why we got third, the most important reason why we got third last season, and obviously such an inspirational player for us overall. But sometimes his decision making is very poor, and it's he's quite an instinctive player, and I think his decision making compared to other players, players who are obviously far worse than him talent wise, but his decision making is sometimes very poor. We should have really have been at least 4 or 5-1 up. Obviously, the one that he played off the heel, I think, of a Sheffield. When we remember we had it was 3 or 4 of it in a really strong counter attack, and he played off Sheffield. We obviously had 3 options, and then I was cursing him. Obviously, he just played defender when it was clearly. But I think that's what we've got to realise with United is that there is a lack of killer instinct. And what I mean by that is that when you go like a couple of goals up or 3 goals up, even in matches,
we go right. Let's sit back. Yeah,
we've seen it under Ollie all the time. Whereas when you look at, for example, just to bring them up, Bayern Munich, when we saw them against Barcelona, in the Champions League. It didn't matter how many goals went in or how embarrassing it got.
Yeah, just that they fucking went in.
They just kept going. It was exactly the same. Obviously that sort of German mentality. It was exactly the same in the 2014 World Cup against Brazil when it was,
Yeah. Well, do you remember of the season when who was it? Man City played in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup, Barnet or something like that, and they were 9-0 up in the first leg. That's almost what I want United to be these days. But it's almost like when we get to a certain point, we either just start pissing about with it, or we just take our foot off the gas, and it really does irritate me. It's irritated me since post lockdown. Because I found that that's when we actually was playing ultimately our best. And we get 3 or 4-0 up, and that's when you'd see fucking Igalo coming down. That's when you'd see James coming down. And I'd be like, well, no, I haven't seen football for 2-3 months. I want to fucking see these up in 19 minutes.
Yeah.
But I totally do agree with you. We do have that almost to a point where it's like, right, what we have, we hold, we'll take what we got. And I think ultimately, it's sometimes 9 times out of 10, it never tends to work out like that for us. I mean, not to think it, but Jose was tried that countless times, wasn't he? He was literally the guy with 1-0, right, sit back. And it just hardly ever tends to work in the Premier League. The only person I've ever seen get away with it literally was Jose for Chelsea. That's it. So I just
I completely agree. Defense, wasn't it? Whereas our defense, obviously, probably the worst. Worst example of that was I don't know if you remember, but in which season? It would have been the 5th. Let me think about this. No, it would have been the 16-17 season, and it was Everton away when Marouane Fellaini came off the bench and gave away the penalty. Do you remember that? And they equalised. It was 1-1 in the end. It was Leighton Baines penalty. But do you remember Marouane Fellaini came on? He was already hated at that point, and he came on with like 10 minutes left and gave away a penalty. With like,
was that the one where Ibrahimovic scored the really weird, like outside of the foot lob from like fucking 40 yards out because he caught the keep? Yeah, I remember that one.
That's just an example, isn't it? And obviously, again, we sort of sat off. In getting back to the game, we sort of sat off. Didn't really show. Obviously had a few opportunities. Like I said, Bruno was wasteful, and other players were as well. But we could have really killed off the game, got to like 4-5, and really tried to keep them pinned back. But again, we sort of started to play within ourselves. Maybe a lack of concentration, but also maybe a lack of energy due to the busy schedule we've had. And obviously, again from the corner. Obviously, it's the umpteenth time. I mean, I don't even know how many times it is this season, but again, corner. Terrible defending. Obviously, Lindelof.
Why can't we even defend corners, or why can't we take them? Does it literally get to the point where Ollie goes, right, lads, practice set pieces? He turns around and there's literally just fucking no one there, just tumbleweed, just goes like that past.
I don't understand how, because I think this may have changed, because I think this was a few weeks ago that I saw this statistic where Harry Maguire, I think, was the 3rd best aerial defense or aerial percentage win ratio of any player in Europe or something. And I think the only person, I can't remember who one of the people that was ahead of him was Kurt Zouma, Chelsea, who is definitely someone who is like, I mean, he scored quite a few goals, I think, this season from corners and stuff. Yeah. But it amazes me that Harry Maguire's aerial win percentage is so high, given the fact that we concede so many goals from corners, and where it's just, that's I want to see the back of the zone of marking, and also I want to see Harry Maguire winning these headers in the defensive area, from corners, because he's taller than anyone else, he's bigger than anyone else. Just get your head on it. And today, obviously, all I saw that was actually getting the ball away. Our defence from corners and free kicks and things was Paul Pogba. Like every time it was always his head, like heading it away. Yeah. Where the hell is Maguire?
No, I completely agree, and that's the frustrating thing, because it's almost like we've got, I mean, Jay Hart's put here, we have no defensive coach, and he says we should have subbed Rashford off in the last 15. He was running out of gas. He wasn't running for the ball anymore. See, that I disagree with. I think he literally could have had his hat-trick if David Blind, if Donny van der Beek would have looked up and played him in for that last one. But getting back to the thing, I think when it comes to attacking corners, definitely, I think we look for Maguire too much. I think we literally just like, right, get it on Maguire's head, get it on Maguire's, almost like we was with Fellaini. But I mean, the fact that we've got Maguire, Matic, and Paul Pogba in our side, and we're still not any better from corners, and we've also had 3 different corner kick takes. I think we've had Bruno taking them for a period, Alex Telles, who I think is quite good at them. But I mean, Am I imagining thinking it was fucking Luke Shaw taking them against City?
He was quite good though. I don't know. He was definitely taken against. He was because I think obviously Shaw's come in a few times for Tellez and he's taken a corner.
It will never be Phil Jones.
Yeah,
It'll never be Phil Jones like against QPR.
To be fair to Luke Shaw, I don't know whether it was the threat of Alex Tellez, but actually attacking wise, offensively in terms of his crosses and his balls and things, and like corners and set pieces, they were actually quite good. It's not. It's it's more that our forwards or attacking players don't necessarily. And I think that's what we've got to have to work on. We're going to have to work on some drills again for corners, because obviously there was clearly one that was worked out with, as we saw in that second half when Alex Tellez took a corner all the way to the edge of the area and Bruno hit a massive wild shot. So clearly there are some sort of training drills that we're doing, but I want to see more of a training drill where, for example, like when Southampton scored against us from the corner, where they had obviously they always went front post and there was someone else peeling off the back and stuff like that. I want to see more stuff like that.
Yeah, a flick off. Getting the first header on, yeah.
Players going, do you know what I mean? So it's more of a cohesive team effort where one player maybe will stand in front of someone like this, obviously unobtrusively, and then another person will run off and stuff. I want to see real sort of ingenuity or clever, cunning tactics, stuff like that. And
do you remember the one against Chelsea in 2009 where Rooney literally touches the ball, steps his foot on it, and then he goes and runs up, grabs the ball and just runs off the corner way, and then just crosses it in, and they're like, "Oh," in Rooney saying, "No, I touched it. I literally stepped on the ball and said I've took the corner."
Yeah, I remember.
That's what I mean. I wish we still had the kind of ingenuity to think of little weird things like that, because it definitely catches teams off guard, 100%.
I think Bruno, to his credit, obviously he is the sort of maestro in many ways for that sort of stuff. And to be fair, free kicks and stuff, he's still trying that. I mean, obviously the goal he scored against Martial scored eventually against City, if you remember that, again at Old Trafford, when Bruno just really quickly just sort of dinked it.
Yeah, just the dink call.
Yeah. And I think that we tried another quick free kick again today. I seem to remember, which didn't quite come off again. It was quite a quick chip and stuff like that, but.
Yeah.
From corners, definitely, both offensively and defensively. Ollie really does need to work on that, especially. I don't necessarily mind as much offensively because we do want to see some goals, but obviously corners aren't necessarily the thing you're going to have to hang your hat on to score too many goals. But
you don't want to become a Burnley.
But defensively, from our point of view, I mean, I've lost count of how many goals we've conceded from corners now this season.
Oh, yeah.
It's just ridiculous, and it's over the last few weeks, in particular, it's really become noticeable. Like Southampton, obviously, Paris Saint-Germain, obviously, when they're on their second corner. So, and
that's the thing. I mean, fair enough. It's entertaining watching us go 1-0 down because you know that there's an onslaught coming. But that won't last all season. Eventually, that your luck will die out. You literally cannot just keep giving the early goal to teams, because when you do start playing against the better teams, the likes of, the Liverpools, the fucking Chelseas, as much as I hate to admit it, I was going to say Arsenal then, but they're probably relegated soon. When you start giving these teams a 1-0 head start, these are teams that won't probably let you back into the game. So it's okay when we're doing it against the Southampton, Sheffield United away, but we need to almost right, let's fucking tighten this up. Unless we were banging in 3, 4, or 5 goals like we was in 2012 when we had fucking Rooney, Van Persie, it's just not going to work. So I think Ollie will be turning his hair out a little bit now tonight, because he literally will be thinking, right, well, you've let me down a few times, and now you've let me down a few times. Who the fuck have I got now? Fucking Romero, Lee Grant.
Yeah, I don't. So I don't necessarily. The thing is, though, obviously, I don't. It's happened too often, though, if that makes sense. For obviously, Ollie will be aware of it, but my point is that it's happened too often, and it's just how often can it happen before it is you'd have to lay the blame at the coaching entirely almost, because
I have got to admit I hadn't actually thought of that. I hadn't actually thought, well, there's too many of these freak errors happening for it to be. I hadn't actually thought of it that way. I just thought, he's probably telling us to pass out from the back, but they shouldn't be getting caught. I've been almost laying it at the fucking goalkeeper's feet.
I mean, it's that because he can't control the mechanic, but ultimately it's still his fault, because he's the one, particularly, who's still picking Lindelof, Maguire every single match. It's just, even if he thinks that they're, prime Ferdinand and Vidic, he should still be, which clearly they're not, obviously, but I'm sort of spitballing because that can only be one of the sort of reasons why he keeps on playing them, or he doesn't obviously trust Tuanzebe or Bay or whoever else he might use. But he's not even given Tuanzebe enough chance, though. He's not even like giving him a run of games. He's literally, I think he's played about 3 times, hasn't he, this season? Or
Yeah, I think one of them literally pocketed Mbappe, but then he had a really good game against Mbappe, but then I can't remember who he played against next. I think he wasn't too probably the game afterwards.
It was probably when it was the Istanbul game, obviously, when he and Maguire played, but they were
Yeah.
more. But obviously, again, Ollie was like a bit like with this dropping De Gea, when clearly, obviously, it was both him and Maguire who were at fault for that third goal against Leipzig. Ollie clearly really loves Harry Maguire, and he's got no blame. He's no blame in his eyes, and it's exactly the same again. Obviously, with the Tuanzebe, bearing the brunt. It's the same person over and over again. And Maguire again today. It's just everything about him is just annoys me at the moment because he's just so slow and cumbersome, and his ball playing out is very poor. It's very lazy. And it just seems like often he knows that he can't beat a man, so he'll just go to ground. So whenever he sort of shield, just goes to ground, like falls over.
Kill the attack dead before it gets too dangerous. But then that's when you start fucking getting your fucking yellow card thing just starts tallying up if you keep doing that kind of shit. I mean, Maguire, I've got to admit, when he first came in, I actually was really happy because I was like, finally we might have a decent centre-back partnership. And I remember those first few games, we were all watching it as in like, finally we've got it, because it did look well at first. But now, as it's kind of settled into it, I'm now starting to think, I can understand why we bought him, but we're not getting the best out of him. So I'd say he's passing out from the back. I'd say arguably, and this might be controversial, but I don't think he's even as good as Lindelof coming out from the back. I think Lindelof is better at playing the ball out from the back. And his strongest strength, literally what you alluded to earlier on, is aerial ability. We just don't see the best from that either, unless it's defending. I mean, like I said, that might be a tactical thing because there's almost an over-reliance on him. We literally might just be constantly aiming just for him because we are doing zonal. I mean, you mentioned that earlier on as well. I'd much rather see us go man for man. I'll always say man for man's better because you know who's at fault. If one player scores, you're like, right, who's marking him? Right, it's your fault. Rather than, right, if he comes into this zone, we've got to deal with him because you're then inviting people in and they've got to run on you. At least if you touch tight, you can't get away.
On that second goal, obviously, I remember, I think it might have been the very first game, wasn't it? I'm sure Jose Mourinho was in the Sky Sports studio for that first game when we beat Chelsea 4-0. If you remember that, obviously, opening game of
yes, I do.
And you were right. Maguire was man of the match that day and was amazing. But
even in that game, though, George, the 4-0 flattered us in a sense, and that is really weird to say. But they had plenty. I think they hit the bar 3 times, hit the post twice.
Yeah, it did, but Maguire was very good still. He was still, some of his passing and stuff like that was really crisp, and it was, it was a bit like almost sort of seeing an oasis in a desert because we've been so long.
What the hell is this?
We've been so long without any decent passing capability, and it's almost like it was, as I said, an oasis in the desert. But now, obviously, as time's gone on and we've gone through it, it's turned out to be a mirage, and that. Ultimately, I didn't want Maguire when we bought him.
Only you could classy up an insult.
I didn't want Maguire when we bought him because I sort of christened him Farmer Maguire when he was before we bought him. And obviously, still.
So not like Saeed then. What did Saeed used to call him? Harry Beckenbauer.
Yeah, but it was more along the lines of because. Obviously, we saw off the back. I think it's more off the back of his performances in the World Cup, obviously for England when he was in the back three. But we played some very poor opposition in that tournament to get to that semi-final. And I just saw what in the air. To be fair to him, phenomenal. I mean, obviously, he was in the air. He still is. He still is good in the air, but not when we need him to be. But on the floor, which is where the majority, obviously, it's called football. So the majority of the game is played with your feet and along the floor. He is very, very poor. Just, he's got so many flaws in his game that, people exploit. Just, terrible at passing out, lack of speed. And yeah, it's going to be interesting because I believe as well, sort of coming on to how we look to rectify this. Obviously, we're only a couple of weeks now from January, and I know that from what I hear in a way from the club, or at least sources and stuff like that, is on Twitter and things that get leaked out. I think the 4 positions that United are looking at are centre back, right back, CDM, and right wing, which I was quite confused about because obviously we do need some support for Wan-Bissaka or a deputy or someone like that, because obviously he's having to play too many games. But I can't believe that they've not identified the fact that we do need a centre forward still. And it's whether they think that Cavani is obviously going to continue some of his good form, but obviously he is quite injury prone as well, Cavani. Obviously,
Igalo's going back to China, isn't it, in January as well? Fuck that.
And obviously not been in the greatest form, and even today, obviously, hopefully the goals acts as a little boost for him, and hopefully he's going to start scoring again. But he's not been the best of forms, and again, unless Ollie wants to, and he doesn't necessarily seem to trust him to, but unless he wants to try Greenwood in a more central role, and really sort of endeavour to do it. But obviously he's not done that with Tuanzebe, so I don't know whether he'll do that with Greenwood. He seems to prefer more of the slightly senior players to sort of, go forward. So.
No, completely agree. We've had another comment from a guy called Ankit Jar. He's put, Maguire is a footballer with 2 wooden legs. I don't. I can understand where you're coming from, but I mean, I liked Maguire when he was at Hull, and I think I liked him in the first season at Leicester. I think do you remember the game when I think it was under Van Gaal, Mourinho, when we was close to Christmas. I think we went 2-1 up against Leicester, and then Martial missed a sitter, and then did Lingard take it round the keeper and miss, and then Maguire obviously got the equalising goal in the 90th minute. I've kind of rated him since then, but I was like, you're good, but I don't know whether you're good enough for us. And then it got to the point where it's like, right, well, if Bailly and Jones are good enough for us, then I guess you're good enough then. But getting back to, just wrap it up.
In terms of Hull, we really missed a trick in Hull anyway, because if at that time, obviously, it was, Robertson was playing with Maguire, wasn't he? So that's the one we really missed out on.
Yeah, we probably could have got him for like 2 million and might have saved 79. But the last thing I want to wrap us up on is obviously the news came out about Cavani today. So he's been charged with an aggravated breach, and also he's been given till the 4th of January to respond. I personally don't understand this. I'm not claiming to be clued up on all the laws and legislations of the game, but as far as I was aware, if you literally got found to have used racist words or just basically it being racist, it was literally an instant ban. It wasn't an aggravated breach, and you literally didn't have a time frame in which to respond. I don't understand why we can then say, okay, like just hypothetically, say if he had said something really offensive or really racist, which I don't know whether it has, but if it was implied it was like a really horrible thing, why would you let him continue to play for 3 fucking weeks before you even ban him?
That's the thing, isn't it? These obviously the FA and stuff like that are such a terrible organisation in many ways. Obviously, lots of different things, but bringing it back to this specific point, they should have made more of a rapid decision, because it is quite astounding that it has been allowed to be delayed this long. Obviously, Cavani has actually been injured, as we know. So, obviously, a cynical person might say it would have been beneficial for them to have made the decision quite quickly, and then he could have almost been injured at the same time as he was serving his ban.
Yeah, almost like use that as time served. Yes. I mean, not that we're condoning what he said or thinking, but I just found it weird. I was like, well, last time I checked, we've got found guilty of being racist, like the whole Suarez situation, what happened wherever. It wasn't a case of, right, you can play for another 3 weeks and then respond to it and then do an appeal. It's just like, right, you've said something dodgy, you've said something bad, you're banned.
I don't think United will appeal it. So I think they'll just...
it won't look good for a global... It won't look good for many reasons, obviously, and the main important thing for them will be, as a brand, it doesn't look good if they support somebody. Whereas, I mean, I found it a very difficult one, I've got to admit, were the first when it first broke, because I was like, he hasn't said it in the term as in he is not aimed at anybody. He's just said it in like passing to a friend, and to him, that's not that bad because of where he's from. But then that's what Suarez said. He said, "Where I'm from, Uruguay, the same place. It's not that big of a deal." So it's like, and we all said that was vile what he did. So it's like, well, if you condemn one, you've got to condemn both. As much as I hate it being a United player, and we're going to ultimately maybe suffer for this, it has to be done. It's the right thing to do.
It's now about when he's going to serve his ban, isn't it? Now that's
Yeah.
thing is because I think if he serves it, if United don't appeal it, and then they sort of get it, within a certain amount of time, it'd be better if we served it now because I think we've got quite a few straightforward games coming up.
Yeah,
it'd be quite beneficial because I think we've got Watford in the FA Cup, haven't we? Which would count as one of these sort of games.
I think so. I don't know. I can't remember the fixture for January. I seen someone to say this is a bit cynical of the FA because Man United play Liverpool in in January. I mean, I like Cavani, but I don't think they really be waking up at night in cold sweats thinking about Cavani.
I disagree. I think he would be very, very valuable asset in that game.
Oh, I totally do, but I don't think that the FA are planning it around that.
Oh, I know, yeah, I know. But from Liverpool, I think it'd be so much better. We do need a full for that match. If we're still in and around it, we're obviously going to play them in about a month, aren't we? So if we're still in and around that point, and we really want to pressurise Liverpool, we do need to beat them. And obviously, their record at Anfield now is
getting ridiculous to this stage now. It's like 3 seasons or something.
Yeah, of just not losing. So we have to go there and win. It's almost it's obviously we just need to go there and win. And
I'd give anything for Liverpool to just go back to that shit little noisy fucker in corner. You just like, I'll leave him. It's like that pissed up person at the party. Just like, I'll just leave him alone. He's in no bed. And now all of a sudden, it's that pissed up person's now got to hold a fucking karaoke machine. It's just like, oh god, it just won't shut up. I can't wait for them to just go have their little thing. Klopp will fuck off, and then they'll just go back to being shit again. I can't wait for that. Same for City. I can't wait for their Royal Barons to fucking get done for something dodgy, and then we can just go back to being the top again. I mean, that's all I've ever known. I was born in 1990. I've literally only ever known us literally win things. So for this, it's fucking horrific.
The trouble is that our period is lasting a lot longer than we would have thought. If anyone had been asked to, this obviously 7 years ago, 7.5 now, since Sir Alex retired. If anyone had been asked then, you'd maybe have said 5 years. You'd maybe have said until we were back, maybe winning a title.
I honestly expected. I'll hold my hands up. I honestly thought that Moyes will do it. I thought Moyes will get the title number fucking 21 or whatever it is. 22. Sorry, I thought that's it. I thought he's inheriting the current champions. How wrong can it go?
To be fair, though, that a lot of it takes us obviously a lot longer than we want to go on to, obviously, because we are in the sort of closing stages of the show. But obviously, the criticism about the fact of a very aging squad that obviously Sir Alex left him with is quite a valid one, really. A lot of the players that we had were sort of on their way out, and it was almost a sort of last hurrah, which I think Sir Alex was sort of in that final season was really.
You think he dropped him in shit? Left him in the shit.
He was really. I think Sir Alex was really, as we saw, and I can bring up a specific example as well. I think Sir Alex was really sort of prioritising. He always prioritised the club, obviously, and he was always like, the club first. But I think in that final season, there was an element of selfishness in terms of, for example, this is the example I'd sort of bring up, is with Robin Van Persie. Obviously, he told Robin Van Persie he was going to be there for quite a few years.
They fucked off after a year. What about that, man? He signed Zaha in January and then never even got to play with him.
Yeah. So that's the sort of example I can use of when Sir Alex was like really thinking in quite a single-minded, driven way of trying to win that title. And obviously, it's quite interesting. Again, I don't know if I brought this up previously, but it's quite interesting that there's almost a butterfly effect where if, for example, Aguero hadn't scored that goal, obviously we're not going to sort of,
Would we have got this? Yeah, would we have got Van Persie?
well,
Would he have dropped it there and then?
but also would Sir Alex have retired then? And then obviously in 2012, I think Pep was available. I think also something. So it was almost as though the stars might have aligned differently in terms of who would have got which managers and things like that. So it's just quite interesting that and obviously how things would have happened. But ultimately, we're such such a shoddily run club that it's very difficult to see any sort of there's not there doesn't even seem to be any sort of sprouts of recovery. I don't even obviously if Ollie has sort of made us a lot of us smile again in terms of winning it or playing more in a United way, but even then we're still quite inconsistent in certain respects, still struggling I think in the matches that really matter, obviously competitively, and obviously the board are still buying terribly. Obviously Maguire is looking like a very poor signing in terms of definitely not worth the money in any respect. And they're not also now not spending enough money either. So I'm really quite interested as to what's going to happen in the next, obviously in January, who they're actually going to buy or whether they'll buy anyone at all.
Yeah, well, hopefully this season we'll go on to win the league somehow, fingers crossed. But I'm going to wrap it up there. Just before you reference the Aguero goal again, because that still fucking haunts me to this day. But thank you for coming on, George. Really appreciated it. Like I said, if anybody ever wants to come on, just literally inbox us on the Real United Talk, or just comment underneath one of these videos and we'll find you, or find us on Twitter. We're always open to having new people. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on, George. Anything you want to say before I go?
Yep, just my final thing. So it's not a personal thing, but just for the channel. So if anyone who's watched the video and has enjoyed the content, if you can like, share, and subscribe for us, that'll be much appreciated. Looking to grow the channel, obviously. Real United Talk is the name and the nature of the channel. Looking forward to Real United fans talking and telling it how it is. So yeah, if you could get involved, then that would be much appreciated. But yeah, excellent win, and thank you very much for having me, Dedrick.
No worries. I'm glad you remember that like, share, and subscribe thing, because it fucking just goes out of me. Anyway, cheers, guys. Thank you very much. Have a good night and enjoy the win. Cheers, guys.
Bye.